else. Like, I kind of realized that I've always been like, hi everyone! Sure. And I felt like as a teacher, it wasn't just, you know, I felt, country road, take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia.
I was already kind of in pain, like a lot. My hand was hurting, my wrist was hurting a lot, and my shoulder as well. So it wasn't looking good for me. Plus, I managed to storyboard 3 entire webtoon episodes in like 2 weeks, and so it was a lot for me. So I decided that I was going to take one week break. But it didn't mean it was the end of the comic. It meant that I was going to go and take photos. Alright, by this point, I needed to take some photos. I needed a break from drawing. So I wanted to be still productive by going to New York City and taking some photos of the settings that I need, or at least reference photos for some drawings. Some are just going to be used directly into the comic. You know, whatever makes it easier considering that I only have 1 week after my break. So exactly that is what I did.
Old Navy, wow. I didn't know Old Navy was literally right there. No McDonald's, shopping count.
I literally went and took like so many reference photos. I could have easily gotten these off like Google Maps, but I feel like it's better if I use my own work, I guess. Technically it's still my own work, so here are the photos. What do you guys think? I know, I'm pretty good at taking photos, you know. After going around New York City and taking a bunch of photos, you know, my exhausting ass day, I was already tired. So the next day I decided that my wrist was getting a little bit better. It's been almost a week. It's time for the actual rendering part of the comic. And let me say, that right there was a nightmare. I fucking hated that so much.
I fucking hate that so much. Exactly. This is it, hindi ba kayo namamatay? Mamamatay din pala. Like making an art is, nahihiya nga ako. Shit. You should have never seen that. I mean, it's nothing. It's a childish type, but even I myself am doing that. I'm not proud of it. But I know that Allah is doing more than that.
That's all coming in handy right here, right now. Because at this moment, I want to get done, and I don't want to work on this anymore, and I want to go on vacation and do my own stuff. So let's do this. The only bad part is that I only have 1 week to do, and I have 3 episodes, over 300 drawings to do. So can I finish this? Can I truly finish this challenge in 1 week, 7 days, barely any sleep, barely any food? You know, I'm just going in and out of the lab, cooking. So I don't really know, but we'll see at the end. While working on the comic, I just wanted to get this done. The only thing going through my mind was finish this, because I've already spent so long, so many hours, so many days, so many weeks just drawing my heart out and storyboarding. Just storyboarding alone took so long, so I wanted to see if I finished all of this as fast as possible. And I did a lot. I really drew a lot. Out of every single one of my videos that I've produced in the last year of me just making content, this has to be the hardest one, the most painful one to do, because I genuinely gave out so much. My wrist gave out so much, my shoulders gave out so much just in this little segment alone. But the results of some panels, oh my god, chef kiss, oh my god, I'm so good at art sometimes. So by now, I've been stressing. My friends have been calling me, asking to hang out, to do stuff. Yeah.
No.
I kind of cut contact with everybody. My arm is about to give out. Yeah, I generally can't draw anymore. I'm tired as fuck. But the only thing that matters is to get
It's
this
like one
comic
of the
done
most brutal
and
form
do
of
it
art that you could ever
specifically
imagine
how
because
I'm gonna do it.
you'll have to do
And so in my
storyline.
head,
And I'm
all I
terrible
was
at
thinking
storyline.
was,
And
State
then making
my
comics, oh god, I'm
let me
terrible
draw
at
one more
perspective.
time.
So I just had to look at
I am
towards.
tired.
Now I watch animation.
I feel
I'm
sleepy.
animator. I'm an
I haven't slept
animator.
in
I've
like
been
2
a
days.
very
I
young
spent
animator since
7
when I
days
was
straight
like around like
just drawing
13 years
and
old.
coloring
I've
this
always been
entire
loving to
comic.
animate.
And I
And I
genuinely
really
can't stress
animate
this
like
enough.
literally hard animation. Like
Please
one
don't do
freaking
this.
second could make me like eight
Never do
drawings.
this.
One
It's not
drawing is
worth it to me.
exhausting. I'm making 8 drawings
Stress this
for
enough.
oh one.
Don't do anything stupid like how I
Second, and I realized that oh my god, this is like a type of self-destruction that I put upon myself. It was terrible to be honest. I even whatever I say. I'm very dumb. I feel like I'm dumber than I think I am. I feel like I'm kind of more dumb than
And at the very end,
Sienna.
you take an
I have so much.
until you make something that is
I have
correct.
so
And my mistake still happens to
many
be
people. They're very arrogant about it because they got high score. I don't believe in it. I'm science. And nabagsak ako sa English. I'm very, when it comes to English proficiency, Allah. I realized that English is not something that you should make fun of. Like, people would make fun of English. They would low on English. Like, mga nag-English major. Ito yung labas nila, PE major. Something so yun. Kasi, you know. Ano, bale. Tapos, you know, she makes all. He truly feels understanding. So I feel like
comic. Fuck, man, that took so long. It might only be one, but it's at least a step in the right direction. Holy fuck.
parang like nakakahimatay siya. It's like creating comics is a type of self-destruction upon yourself, you know. And you're not even sure if people will actually appreciate it. God, I was thinking, you know, I'm not good. Actually, I was highest in Filipino. What grade? 89. Highest also Filipino. Totoo yun. Pero ang hirap ng Filipino. And the thing about the difficulties of Filipino is just probably the same as English. But I think now, ay mababa ako. Kaya, you know, did you know that when I was in 11th grade, alam mo yung subject na nabagsak ko? Oral education. I failed in that. I kind of failed. It's so funny, you know? Do people really think that I'm intelligent? This is because I know how to speak. I can't believe they would assume me to be abstractly intelligent because I can speak English with an American accent. It's not good. It's an American accent. I've never studied it. And even if I was given $1 million, I don't think I will go to the United States because of the political issues there and it's, I don't know, left, right, you don't even know who's right. Left, you don't know who's left, right, we don't even know who's right. Who's wrong and who's right, I don't know. At this point, you should just support peace. At this point, the only way you can do is support this. But everything is such a, people are no longer patriotic. People are not being proud of their identity, and you can see that there really is something wrong. There's just something wrong here. But to be really honest,
it's a story that you develop and you practice, and then you do that first story. Maybe it doesn't get picked up, and then your second story, maybe that gets picked up. Practice is the most important thing. Being able to understand that.
I really love his pinpoint kasi like why would people assume na for the first time makukuha? Eh, hindi naman talaga yan totoo eh. Oh, what is a man? What has he got? If not himself, then he has none to say the things he truly feels. And it's a world.
entire project behind, and you might
Oh
not meet
shit.
a weekly deadline. So if you can't force yourself to pretty much write and draw every single day, then maybe serialization is not for you. But that's a habit that you develop over time. It's not just something where you're just like, all right, today I'm going to show up and start writing every single day for the rest of, it's something that you develop over time. It takes an enormous amount of discipline. It takes an enormous amount of work ethic to be able to show up and write 50 hours a week, 50 to 100 hours a week. You're spending like most of your life reading something.
You know,
So it takes a lot
I'm
of
really
time, it takes a
working
lot of
hard, but
effort,
at the end of the day,
you have to
there's
really
really
force
no.
yourself to show up every single
And I
day.
was not
You feel like,
paid.
oh,
I
wow, don't
was
feel like
never
getting up
paid.
today.
I
I
was
don't
like,
feel like drawing today. I don't feel like
and
writing today.
the thing
It doesn't
about it is,
matter.
not
You
only
have to
I was,
show up every single day.
I
Once you set
didn't
it,
even
you set it,
was
okay,
acknowledged
great,
for
great,
it.
great. But,
So like,
for the most part, it's not based on if you feel like writing, you write because you have to write, or you draw because you have to draw. That's kind of what serialization is, because we don't feel like going to work every day. That's how we are as humans, but we do it because we have to meet our deadlines. Super important. And it ties also into the first topic of practice, because you have to show up every single day to practice, to write new stories, to get better, draw to get better, to constantly improve yourself. And you can only do that through iterative development over time. Number 3, which obviously is very important, is studying the craft. The craft of manga, the craft of anime, the craft of webtoon. You have to be studying at all times, and you have to be reading and watching things with a very analytical eye. So when you're watching live action films, even, you could be studying, oh, how did the filmmaker do it this way? That's a very interesting shot. Maybe I should use that shot in my serialization. Oh, wow, the story of XYZ was really interesting. Maybe there's a way I can incorporate it into my story. Wow, this manga panel, super great. One Piece, Sakamoto Days, great manga panel. I would love to see how I can use it as a reference for something that I'm doing. Basically, looking at every single aspect and facet of your life in terms of entertainment, not just entertainment, but also like experiences, and being able to draw from that and seeing how it can apply to your own work is super important. Sometimes it makes it hard to just sit back and enjoy the project. You can have your own time and be like, wow, I'm just going to sit back and enjoy Into the Spider-Verse or whatever. Then maybe you can watch it a second time and look at it from a really analytical perspective and see like, why did this work for the audience? How can I incorporate what worked here into something that I'm doing that can also help me work? Don't copy, use inspired. Use inspiration, don't copy. So habit number 4, which is also pretty much a make or break if you're going to survive in this industry, is being open to feedback. There's this book I read called Ego is the Enemy, which is ultimately something on ego. If you think you're at the top of the world, I actually have a sticky note here. I'm going to read this real quick. There's always more to learn in your field. That's one of my sticky notes.
yeah, things could just make you humble easily, and it's terrible, you know. Creating comics is like a form of self-expression of yourself. It was absolutely, you know. Did you know one of the funniest, just, what do you think the subject I failed? I don't think you guys will have 100. No, you're wrong. Now on? No, I just speak anything. I think, you know, I was... Okay, fine. If we're gonna do this, we're gonna make you pass. Oh, shit. And, you know, it's just a thing.
But at the same time, you have to be open-minded to their feedback. If you can't work with other people, there's no way you're going to survive in the manga and webtoon industry. There's no way. Unless you're doing a story that's completely funded by yourself, there's no way that you're going to survive. Teamwork and collaboration is super important, and the best way to foster teamwork and collaboration is by being open to feedback.
Oh, yeah, I know that.
An artist who might give you an additional way to do a scene.
But my ancestors absolutely knew, because we were assuming that my parents would get like, okay, let's create an actual team border. We are not gonna accept you because you're gonna force us. I feel like if you're gonna ask us that in fact, we believe in Jesus Christ, but not as a messenger, but not as a sign of God, because he never seriously used on a phone. I read the whole goddamn, and I was like, well, but he said he's the father. I felt like these motherfuckers are so fucking delusional. Nakakairita. That's cheap. No, you're dumb. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
So the reason I made it like a system fantasy story is because soul leveling was something that was very popular at the time. And my co-writer, Jack, was really good at writing system fantasy. So I was like, okay, system fantasy is really big in Korea, really big in Japan, really big in China, and it's growing in the United States because of the rise of soul leveling and all these Japanese properties. So why don't we incorporate that into this risky idea that I had to make it more of a more fantasy, and then we'll draw them in this riskier concept, and then like fuse them together, and it becomes like something that feels fresh, feels new, but also familiar, right? I think that's the key thing is ultimately creating stories that are fresh and new, but also familiar. Because if it's not familiar, then it's too out there, and the reader's not going to connect, they're not going to be interested, and it's too risky for a lot of publishers to take on. It's okay to take risk, but if you take too much risk, then you risk not being picked up and not being published, which ultimately will prevent you from being able to share your story with the world. Making sure that you're balancing your creativity with something that has a market fit is super important, because if your project doesn't sell, then it's going to get axed early and you won't be able to tell the story that you want to tell anyway. The only way to take 100% risk is if you fund something completely by yourself, you throw it out there, and you hope for the best. It's a big risk. Balancing creativity and market fit is super important. A lot of people don't do that. They just make what they want to make, which is totally fine, but at the same time, just be prepared to take rejection, which should be another habit on here, which is taking rejection. Rejection is super important. It's a super big part of the process. I've been rejected a million times in all aspects of my life. Finding jobs, getting published, women, like getting used to rejection is super important. That should be my number 6 habits, but rejection is also super important. I want to give you guys another bonus tip here in terms of like a habit, and it's on organization. The reason this is not part of like the original 5 or 6 habits that I had planned for this video is because I don't think I'm that organized myself. I kind of just like think, oh, like, you know, today is a day, I'm gonna write God Game, just a Goblin Samurai Tour, I'll write these 3 chapters today, boom, done. Okay, great. Then tomorrow I do this X, Y, Z. I'm not that organized. I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not that organized. That's why I can only do 10 series right now. If I were actually organized and I maximize my time, I could probably do 20. I'll be honest with you guys. However, organization is super important. If you want to be serializing for a weekly process, you want to be preparing yourself for being able to pump out chapters and work daily, being organized is a great way to make sure to maximize your time, because on a weekly schedule, you only have like 7 days to put out the next chapter. So you have to have a very organized, structured day in order to make sure that you meet those deadlines. I'd say that organization is
Telling myself, there's literally nothing. Like,
but something I can personally work on. I think that's something that all of you guys should be also keeping in your mind as a habit as you're going through your process as a creator.
and that's the only way for you to actually jump. And you do not burn out yourself. There's really no point. Even I myself, I was not really the top. Maybe in my own section, yeah, but that was not really the rank one. I was rank 1 in our class section, but never, because there's just so much people, so much students who are so and way much better than me. It's like I'm also not. You should also know. One thing that I love watching Miss Universe, that's for sure. And
Next up, book a card.
that's different. Tapos alam mo,
Get it today.
Diyos ko, 7. You know, tapos hindi lang yan, binagsak. So like, masyadong easy. So, you know, parang, you're so, kasi yun, kasi parang, they were kasi nag-base sila sa tsaka ang napakabobo. I'm very bad. Napaka-bad writer. Kung mag-essay na, natatakot na ako eh. Like, oh my God, maaalam niya talaga na hindi to AI kasi napaka-bobo talaga. Hindi ako nagbibiro Like, naalam nila talaga na hindi to AI kasi napaka-bobo talaga. Like, this, hindi rin ako marunong mag-organization. I don't know. I'm so excited to be humbled. That's what I'm really excited to be humbled. I don't want someone, because I've never been in that system, so my system is just me being humble, and I kind of like it. Patagal nagugustuhan ko na to. Just like it. I don't like how it's way much better. Mas okay to kasi. At tapos ang kito, kinuha ko, ninakaw ko yung apps. Tapos ang ganda! So beautiful! And there's just
for not just yourself, but also your projects, so that when you have to market your project, it's really easy for you to put stuff out there. I would just say posting on social media, if you want to do ads, signings, or something like that, do whatever you need to do, but ultimately, looking at marketing and being a master of marketing is super
absolutely
important.
not.
You want to be successful as a creator. That's what fun as creating stuff is. You can't ignore the fact that you also have to market everything that you do. How can I study to improve my manga narrative? First off, by watching podcasts or videos like such as mine, manga classes and books out Hirogo Araki's Manga Theory Practice is very useful. I have a manga class out there. I'm working on a webtoon class right now. Looking at a lot of educational resources is super good. Reading manga and webtoons and watching anime with a very analytical lens. Basically looking at how those narratives of those very successful series, how those operate, what the structure looks like, what works, what doesn't work, and then being able to pull in aspects of that and incorporate it into your own work is pretty useful. Studying works that you really like and seeing how they did things from a narrative perspective is arguably better than any class that you could ever take. How much is too much for characters in the first few chapters? When you're doing a manga or a webtoon or anime or comic or novel, I think the main thing is when you introduce characters, it's a really exciting thing because readers really like new characters. The downside for introducing too many characters at once is you are unable to give them all screen time and therefore the attention that each character deserves. I'll give you a good example. In a lot of shonen manga, the example being Dragon Ball, another example being Naruto, you have a lot of characters, huge cast. The issue is when you introduce a lot of characters to the narrative, you have to somehow keep them in the narrative and keep them relevant. Otherwise, you might as well just kill them all. Kill them off or just like send them off screen somewhere. So if you're including characters, introduce them, don't just make them stand there. Otherwise, you might as well have not introduced them. I don't too many characters for the first couple chapters is the number, whatever that number might be, that you cannot give proper attention or screen time to. If you introduce a bunch of characters and you have no intention of developing those characters or building intrigue to those characters, then you might as well not introduce them. It's okay to introduce a character and be like, hey, I'm going to dive into this character later. My Hero Academia does that with Todoroki, where they introduce him as part of like one of the classmates, and then they get into his character super like later in the school tournament, and then he becomes one of the main characters. That's a good example of we introduce the character very vaguely, and then we build intrigue, and then we get into his character a lot later. But if you have no interest in developing characters at all, good example, 10-10 from Naruto, not a very developed character, even though they had like so many chapters. That's a scenario where I would just not even bother introducing the character or kill them off. The problem with killing characters off when they aren't developed is that it just feels cheap also. So I just wouldn't even introduce them, even if your game plan is to kill them off. How to participate in a manga contest. There's a lot of manga contests internationally that are now happening. There are some contests such as Shonen Jump Tezuka, which is primarily rooted in Japan. So unless you're Japanese and have a Japanese address, you cannot enter certain competitions for manga in Japan. However, there are some manga competitions that are international. An example is the Silent Manga Edition, which I entered and won a couple months, I think maybe a year ago. There are certain manga competitions that are international that you guys can definitely enter. You just have to find them. They all have submission guidelines, so just look at the submission guidelines and then you can enter. How to not get distracted. That's super hard. I am distracted all the time. Always on TikTok. Always watching videos and always getting distracted from writing and doing stuff. Sometimes I'm talking to my art director.
Ay, kamanatog pa may na. Ha? Oo. Gusto ko lamang. Sabay ma.
It's a lot of just like mental willpower. This is not something I fully mastered yet. Something that I do is I will just close all the tabs of things where people can reach me, because the biggest distractions in my opinion are things that are related to connectivity. Connectivity being like social media, YouTube, Discord, anywhere where people can reach you or you can just be mindlessly scrolling are usually the key distraction. So if you completely eradicate those things in terms of like your ability to access them, it becomes a lot easier for you to just own in. This is a theoretical thing that I haven't implemented, but I know it would work because I've seen a lot of project managers do this and productive people. If you block out time in your calendar and you're like, for this 2 hours, all I'm going to do is write this series. If you did that, you won't get smarter forever. You work internationally. Your payday should be smart. And you actually adhere to those rules and you block out everything else. A lot of it's mental willpower. You just like turn off your phone, shut off Discord, block YouTube. For those 2 hours, all you did was work. You would 100% done for those 2 hours. And the distraction is all willpower and how much you personally persevere against like the temptation of all these things. So not get distracted. Looking at productivity access probably the key thing. How to control the pacing of your story so it doesn't overwhelm your readers. something that's super important is, especially for a first chapter, info dumping can be sometimes overwhelming. So much text can also be super overwhelming. I'll give you a good example of Hunter x Hunter. When you look at some of the recent manga chapters, it's a lot of text. It's a scary thing to look at when you're reading a manga. Like read them. Good example, another one is Jujutsu Kaisen. When they had that with the recent manga chapters, it's pretty much a novel, right? A lot of too much text can also be super overwhelming. I'll give you a good example, like Hunter x Hunter. When you look at some of the recent manga chapters, it's pretty much a novel, right? A lot of text is a scary things to look at when you're reading a manga. You should like read that. Good example, another one is Jujutsu Kaisen, when they had that one guy with the slot machine, when they were explaining his abilities. There's so much to explain and there's just so much going on. Most people are like skimming through that, if I'll be honest with you. So keeping things really concise, keeping things not too complicated, unless you're like pretty deep into the story, is probably key. Not trying to cram too many story beats to your earlier chapters. Keep it slow. You're taking the reader along with you for the journey. You're introducing them to your story. It's this balance of like giving them information and getting to the meat of the story at the beginning, but also holding their hand as you bring them in, because you want it to be kind of a very smooth transition, as opposed to just being like, here's my entire story, here's a lot of information, accept it, understand all of it. You're just gonna be like, oh, too much going on. Just be not the same thing. I'll say Super Trigger's a good example where they plow along, things move super fast, but it's honestly probably better to go slow. If you go too fast and there's too much stuff going on, it's a lot easier to just mess up. As a writer, do you personally draw out sketches for characters in your series, or do you just describe what the looks like for the artist and allow them to work on it? That's really so traditional manga. Actually, a writer such as myself would draw the manga name. For characters, I usually just do like a character sheet and you leave it to the artist to implement it. But in terms of the storyboarding of a chapter, usually that is left up to the writer to start. Will then do their own based on the writer's storyboard. They call this in Japan the name, manga name, which is just the storyboard. In my opinion, it's not so necessary. I think sometimes like it can be useful to give the artist to understand how you envision the composition of the manga, like individual panels. However, if you trust the artist is actually and can sometimes do their own creative twist. I personally would just let them do the storyboard entirely. What I like to do instead is to put very detailed are so detailed I've been told that details consider exactly what I would envision for the actual panel. Do not tell them that they have to follow the script to it. It's mainly meant as a guideline for the artist to use to I'm not supposed to handhold it where I'll That's not how I am, mostly because I work on so many different projects. There's no way I can force every artist to match my exact vision, because I work with artists in a collaborative capacity. It's just their project, it's my project. I don't make them draw a certain way, and I don't make them do certain panels. I only want for my artists and my projects for them to be able to put out the best that they can put out, whether that's following my script or how their artist wants to page. It doesn't really matter. I just only advocate for whatever makes the best thing. Long story short, I don't draw out the sketches. I would say it's useful to draw the sketches if you are at a higher level of talent than the artist that you're working with. So for example, if I were to work with a brand new artist, an artist that has not done manga or webtoons before, then it might be useful for me to storyboard things out for them, and then they can interpret that however they wish. But because I work with a lot of people who are just as talented or more talented than me, then usually I write a script and they can honestly improve upon what I do. If you're planning to get anime, why not go for more manga than webtoons? As we know that manga have more chance to get anime. Also, any tips on how to write scripts? So my goal is to get anime before I turn 30 years old. Super hard, I'm 26. I only have probably 2 series right now that are on track. Probably, down that path because they are popular. Great question. Why webtoons not manga? One, webtoons internationally in terms of a lot more international webtoon space. Europe, webtoons in Japan, webtoons in China, webtoons in Korea, webtoons in South America, North America. There are readers who are killing it a full-time living.
Stop!
They're trying to make it less gate kept. I imagine it's because manga and anime are becoming a lot more international in terms of like what people are interested in. So they're trying to pull in talent from all over the world. That being said, there's not a lot of good mangaka talent yet internationally. I would say like some of the best ones are probably in Europe, not yet in North America. North America doesn't have a lot of good mangaka yet. To be seen. We'll see how it comes in the coming years. But I would say it's just easier to make a living from webtoons given the current environment. I would say that webtoons, like I usually say in my videos, are a newer medium, and so therefore I see it as a lot more disruptible for a higher level talent. It's easier to stand out. If you go into manga, there's already a lot of legends that are still serializing, right? Like Takehiko Inoue, Horikoshi, Kishimoto is still doing stuff. Oda has been serializing since my birth. In webtoons, there isn't that level of legends yet. So I would say like you have a bigger chance at becoming the next Oda in the webtoon space than you do if you were to go into manga and try and compete against Oda himself. That being said, if you somehow were able to compete with Oda, you would probably have more clout than you did if you were to just become the next Oda in webtoon, right? But again, I'd say that webtoon also has a really good opportunity to make anime as well. But I have not given up on manga entirely. I'm still keeping manga as a key part of my studio's goals over the next couple of years. It's just that webtoon serializations are a lot easier to land because I'm based in the United States. It's just a lot easier for me to land webtoon serializations than to land a manga serialization in Japan. It's easier to get a serialization done and therefore easier to put content out. That's probably why I lean more into webtoons than I do manga right now. But manga is my passion. It's why I got into webtoons in the first place. It's why I got into storytelling. I will never give up on manga. Here's a good question, and it's the last one that I'll do. How do you monetize the actual webtoon or comic? Is the only real way volume sales? Most webtoons don't sell any physical copies. How do they make money? So if you sell on Webtoon Canvas, honestly, the only way to make money through like self-publishing platforms usually is through donations, support through Patreon, support through merchandising, that kind of stuff. And if they decide to package their webtoons into physical copies and then sell those in a self-published fashion, that's another way you can make money. If you're in an originals pack, people pay to read chapters ahead of time, right? If you look at Tapas or Webtoon or a couple of other publishers out there, usually there's some kind of way where you can buy to read chapters ahead of time. So that's one way that creators make money. There's also ads that are running on your webtoons, and I think that Webtoon Canvas creators also get paid by ads. I think just attention, you get paid on attention, you get paid on whether or not people buy your stuff. I think then you can package the IP and go to print, you can go to animation, you can go to live action, people get paid for those. So there's a lot of ways that you can get paid for building intellectual property. I would say probably the easiest way is if a platform has built-in monetization features. So just like, you can donate money or you can buy chapters or you can, any way where you can get money, like buying merchandising and stuff like that is probably the easiest way to make money off of like webtoons. For manga, a lot of the money comes from volume sales for sure. I'll say like manga, because it's more of a printed focus, seems like it's easier to monetize than webtoons, but I would say that webtoons are a lot more accessible than manga because you can just read a lot of these chapters for free, right? That is the end of today's episode. I want you guys to be leaving some more questions in the comments. If you have any questions of the manga, webtoon, anime industry, please leave in the comments. And check out my studio's projects for publishing stuff ongoing, serializing multiple series ongoing. You can check out all the series in my description. Feel free to leave comments, like, comment, subscribe. I'll catch you guys on next week's episode. Peace.
the comic industry ended its censorship of Japanese manga, meaning with the flooding in the market, the Korean comic sales plummeted to 20% of the copies actually being sold. In the same period, the internet was becoming a large source of entertainment as well, being an aid in the plummeting sales of manga at the time. Many took to the internet to post their short forms of comics, and in 2004, Webtoon was founded by Yoonko Kim and launched by the Naver Corporation. Webtoons was officially released globally in 2014. Now that we all know what Webtoons is and how it came to be, let's talk about the audience it caters to, romantics. The romance genre is a $1.8 billion industry that is well above other genres. Webtoon pushes its romance comics more than its other series, and with good reason. Romance sells. Webtoon is a company, so of course they are going to do what's financially best for itself. Speaking from personal experience, one of my only successful webcomics was a romance based on true events, and it has been the only successful webcomic in my repertoire. In an article published by Curious, Why Do People Read More Romance Novels?
Kaput!
The article states that nearly 50% of romance readers blast through at least one book per week. Some readers are observing 4 to 5 books every couple of days. So as a platform where your main goal is to get readers to keep coming back for more, or to spend money to get early access to future episodes, it's the only logical thing to push the romance-based comics and get the young audience hooked and returning for more, or better yet for Webtoons, spending money to get more. It's why Webtoons continues to push comics like Lore Olympus, True Beauty, Down to Earth, and probably the most infamous, Boyfriends, because that's what sells, that's what brings in the viewers, and most importantly, that's what brings in the money. All of the previous
Piru. Oh my god, you are what? A pitiful.
because they are all romances that appeal to Webtoon's main viewer base, whether the premise of the comic is good or bad. So now that we're aware of the fact that Webtoons really likes money, but to be fair, what company doesn't, this plays into the favoritism that Webtoon shows its creators that bring in the views and monetary value, such as the aforementioned comics. But how does it treat its other original creators? The platform essentially allows any creator to post their comic for free under the title Canvas, with the promise that if the comic garnered enough viewers and attention, the comic then can be offered the title Original, which means the artist is now under contract to Webtoon and gets paid. Keep in mind, all Webtoon original creators are paid by Webtoon. I took to Reddit in search of how Webtoon original creators feel about their treatment, and their takes on Webtoon are less than stellar. Most make mention of the burnout, loss of creative control over their series, and complete lack of help over promotion of their series from the very site that claims to give them a hand in the first place. The burnout most creators experience is from the pressure to perform. Webtoon originals have to have a minimum of 40 to 60 panels and are paid a flat rate, so if you draw more panels, you won't make more money from it. You're also expected to keep busting out these episodes each week. Now, some original creators do have help from a team, but most do not have that advantage. Creators also lose a lot of control over their characters' personalities, so that Webtoon can have an easier time marketing to its user base. This is something a lot of creators specifically do not want to hand over. This is also why so many of the most popular comics we see and read have the same ultra-feminine main character and dark, mysterious, handsome love interest. This is also why comics like Boyfriends got so much attention from the general public. The characters are only the stereotypes they portray, making marketing for Webtoon much easier. Creators have planned out arcs and traits they want to portray in their story, and for Webtoon to take that away from them in the name of public appeal is a direct betrayal of its creators and the artistic freedom Webtoon claims to offer. Some might argue that characters need a revamp, but to that I ask, why would Webtoon offer a deal to the creators if they don't like the story to begin with? There are plenty of outliers that go against the Webtoon norms, but those stories always end prematurely, or are a direct result of Webtoon turning its back on the very artists they claim to be helping. The site will deliberately skip on advertisements for the lower flow original creators over comics that bring in more views, advertisement on the Canvas page, but there are still plenty of other hard-working artists who someday want to catch the eyes of Webtoon. You might have heard about the controversial advertisement Webtoon proudly displayed until it started to garner much backlash. The ad reads, "Comics are literature's fun side hustle." It is really a spit in the face to all of its creators who work tirelessly to put their work on the site and bring views through their own advertisement. I myself was working 40 to 60 hours a week on top of a job and was still doing it for free while Webtoon gets the perks out of the engagement my comic brought to the site. Artists already have to prove themselves worthy of their opponents. They don't need Webtoon belittling the work that is posted on its own site. Webtoon later issued an apology for their short-sightedness. It really tells you that they care about all of the creators that personally drive engagement to the site in the first place. Let's move on to the most controversial and perhaps subjective issue with Webtoon. This site promotes inappropriate and predatory ideology onto its readers. To start with, 64% of Webtoon's readers are all under the age of 24, with kids as low as 10 years old tuning in for each week's episode of their favorite comics. Webtoon has, in the past, promoted comics with borderline predatory relationships, babysitter-child relationships, and unrelatable role models. These promotion feeds are the same for everyone, rather than having an individual feed based on one person's interests. It's completely unethical for Webtoon to be promoting these behaviors as if they're normal. It's not a matter of if readers can understand right or wrong, it's a matter of Webtoon promoting these comics with inappropriate ideologies. I would like to again reference my own comic Vinegar. In Vinegar, I used examples from my life about red flags in a relationship I was in a way to exhibit toxic traits in relationships that are lesser known. And for a majority of my comic, most if not all of my commenters were very happy with the state of the main character and her love interest, completely missing the fact that my comic was meant to exhibit negative behaviors for love interest to show. Vinegar was not only based on true events, but was also a very grounded story, leaving nothing to be interpreted differently. So, with my comic that is meant to help readers aware of potential threats, and readers ignoring the threats just the main character had, they might be in danger of the predatory ways Webtoon promotes and advertises inappropriate comics to its younger viewers. This ties into the popular question, do violent video games make the player violent? Numerous studies show no correlation between the two. So, in turn, why would harmful subject matter of comics be harmful to the people who read them? In an article, Media Effects on Attitudes, Values, Beliefs, it states, an abundance of research has provided evidence that entertainment media can have important effects on attitudes, values, and beliefs of an audience member. In many respects, these effects operate in much the same way as the effects noted from persuasive media, such as news media. However, the observed effects of entertainment media consumption may best be understood as unintended effects, in the same sense that these media do not necessarily intend to persuade or inform. So, if the Webtoon audience reads at the very least one or more of these harmful comics, it's not completely out of the question that they are getting the wrong message from parts of these media, unintended or not. So, is it up to creators, who most times have a subjective idea of good or bad, to watch out for their young readers? Absolutely not. I think it's unfair for creators to take care of their audience in this instance. Everyone has a different moral compass. It shouldn't be left up to an individual who might have a skewed moral compass to protect the readers that come from the site. It's up to the platform that connects its young readers to these comics and try and protect them. As creators, we have no knowledge of our audience's age on Webtoon. The only thing we can do is put an age restriction on our comics in hopes that the correct age will read them. Unfortunately, it's up to Webtoon to take charge of the situation and protect its main audience, and unfortunately, Webtoon doesn't care. You might be wondering how I found this information, and let me tell you, it takes an absurd amount of digging. Which leads me to my final point of why Webtoon isn't as great as everyone says. They sweep every wrongdoing of their own under the rug and do everything in their power to keep any ill practices out of public eye. There are many stories of artists who accepted an original offer from Webtoon, and when they couldn't bring in the numbers that Webtoon had hoped for, their work was no longer heavily promoted, or they were ghosted, or the contract Webtoon created was ignored. And it's so easy for Webtoon to do this because the amount of money it takes to sue a company in another country as a struggling artist is immeasurable. Aside from the previously mentioned inappropriate ad, Webtoon has something while I was researching for this. I am completely and utterly unmarketable to Webtoon. My main focus is in historical dramas with a little bit of romance. It's never my first genre. My characters aren't the typical characters that are pushed in Webtoon. And after the last 4 years, I finally figured it out. Some stories are unmarketable to Webtoon, and they will never see you as a benefit. They will never offer you a contract or help give you a platform. It's a hard pill to swallow for me, especially when I thought I'd been doing everything right and devoting myself to my art like so many other artists before me have been doing. And the real question for creators is, where do we go from here? Webtoon is a site that clearly holds the quantity of readers as well as financial gain above its actual creators. Are you okay with the site as a whole? Or maybe you're a little bit miffed at the horrible condition Webtoon decides to treat its creators? The site has loudly and clearly stated with its actions that they do not care about the very people who bring readers to the site in the first place. They have no interest in helping its young viewers navigate the oversaturated app. As long as they keep seeing monetary gain from its viewers, they will keep doing what they're doing. For the community it's built upon. And I want no part of it. I've been with Webtoon as a reader and as a creator since 2017, 3 years after it was released globally. I know firsthand how Webtoon has been treating its users. As an artist, I don't want to become marketable for a site that doesn't care about me unless I have something more than my art or a story to offer them. I can't in my right mind give up my characters or stories in the name of public appeal. I don't want to be part of a company, paid or not, that treats its creators in the horrible manner it's displayed. As someone who takes her work somewhat seriously, I refuse to be trampled on by a site that claims they do the exact opposite. You can often fix something that's been broken, but you can't fix something that never worked in the first place.
Hinak, what the fuck?
Webcomics have been around for
Totoo talaga yun! Wala akong pakialam.
90s and have stuck around ever since. The overwhelming majority of webcomics have always been self-published either on the artist's own website or on a bigger webcomic platform. And over the years, a few of these platforms like Smack Jeeves or Webcomic Nation would rise and fall, succumbing to the
Viva
competition with
Mexico.
social
Ah,
media
viva!
fading into obscurity. In the 2010s, vertical scrolling webcomics, otherwise known as webtoons, would begin gaining popularity in Korea with the rise of smartphones and high-speed internet. And Korea would begin trying to establish webtoons in the US as yet another one of their cultural exports. Naver, a Korean company, would establish Webtoon, all caps, as their American branch of their webcomics business. And Kakao, another Korean webcomic company, would establish Tapas as their American branch. Webtoon and Tapas began dominating the American webcomic scene. These companies created webcomic platforms relying on user-generated content for revenue, but also functioned as webcomic publishers, paying creators to make webcomics exclusive to their platforms. Instead of focusing on page format comics like their older, more traditional competitors, which could be harder to read on the small screen of smartphones, they focus almost solely on the scrolling webtoons, which were addictive because of how easy to read they were. These companies also changed the game by paying creators for their comics, since previously webcomic artists had to rely solely on ad revenue, and Patreon was still a new player to the game. When I first started making my own webcomic in 2019, the webtoon scene was maturing, but still looked a little bit different than it does today. Most of the popular webtoons were in romance, slice of life, and the comedy genres. And the art styles were also slightly less high effort than they are today, most of them having a very generic anime-like style. Not knocking any artist, the medium has just evolved quite a bit since then. For example, a lot of webtoons nowadays rely on a whole team making them instead of just one person and their coloring assistant. The webtoon scene was also just smaller in general. There were less webtoon originals and less webtoons in general. So Webtoon has two sides to the platform. The official digital publishing side, which is called Webtoon Originals, where artists are contracted to make weekly episodes and they're paid for this. And then there's the other side where anyone can make and post their comic, and that side is called Webtoon Canvas. On Webtoon Canvas, you post your comics for free and you can post them whatever you want. And this side of Webtoon is also known as kind of where you audition to be a Webtoon Originals. Basically, Webtoon Originals are scouted from Webtoon Canvas, and that's where I started posting my series Covenant. I think one of the components of Covenant's success is the art style. It had this in-between East and West look that, in my opinion, made it unique. I focus on shading and rendering to have it really stand out, and many readers will comment on my use of lighting upon their first read of Covenant, and that's definitely no coincidence. I was actually really inexperienced with the webcomic medium and comics in general, but that actually became sort of an advantage. I was naive and experimental, and I wasn't really thinking about how to make a style that was sustainable for a long-running series. A more seasoned artist like me of today would definitely try to make a style that was more sustainable and simpler and faster to avoid burnout and injury. But back then, I was ignorant and determined to make every panel look as good as possible. I wasn't fully painting each panel, but I definitely thought about each one as a complete illustration, which is not the smartest thing to do when it comes to making comics. That approach would eventually cause me problems down the line, but at the time, it made Covenant visually stand out among the other comics. I think another component that makes Covenant successful is the genre itself. Covenant is a supernatural action comic, but it's also a slow burn queer romance with boys love and girls love subplots. Most action stories with romance, especially in shonen manga and anime, treat the romance as a side note. And on the other hand, most romance stories focus solely on the relationships and stick to genres like slice of life or drama, because the romance is the plot. Covenant combines the two, offering a story where queer romance plays a really important part in the action thriller plot, but it isn't the main story. I think that combo spoke to an underserved audience, and I found that Covenant's fandom is actually really loyal and dedicated, even if it isn't the biggest fandom in the world. And I think it's because my story is specifically for them. It's something that they've been looking for a while. And I think combining genres that aren't usually paired automatically kind of gives your story a leg up. Also, if you've been wanting to see a certain type of story that doesn't really exist yet, chances are other people are also wanting to see it too. I always say that luck played a huge part in how my comic got picked up so early. Covenant was offered a digital publishing contract, maybe 5 or so updates into self-publishing, which is pretty fast. I did work really hard to make the art stand out, like I mentioned, but also Webtoon just happened to be trying to fill out its action genre at the time. The action genre is pretty difficult because artists really need to understand storyboarding, perspective, anatomy, how to depict fight sequences in order to bring action stories to life. So contrary to popular belief, being picked up by Webtoon or any digital publisher does not guarantee your success, especially financially. Not only is the pay not the best, but you also can't count on these publishers to promote your work, which is honestly kind of messed up since your success also benefits them, but that's a whole other conversation. So for Covenant, I was being paid per episode that I completed, which I guess is the dream, but the dream is much harsher in reality. Because my style was so high effort and detailed, I ended up taking 2 weeks on average to complete an episode from start to finish. I was getting $800 per episode, so on average I was making $1,600 a month, which I mean, you can say that's a skill issue, that's fine with me. In a really good month, I could make 3 episodes in 4 weeks, and that was me like tearing my attendance up. I was getting seriously injured from that. So in a really good month, I was making $2,400 a month, and that was for like 80-hour work weeks while getting injured. And I also had to hire coloring assistants out of my own pocket, so I was actually making even less than that. Even though I was getting published, the responsibility of marketing and drawing in readers still fell on me, and publishers these days are relying more and more on the social media savviness of their artists and writers. And while I don't agree with this, I also don't believe in just giving up and rolling over just because your publisher won't market your series for you. While I was publishing Covenant, Webtoon never
So, ganda kung
promoted
mag-dentist ka na
series
lang.
outside of the
No
occasional
joke.
banner. They weren't really interested in making merch or advertisements or anything that would help my series grow, which is a little bit insane because literally any other medium or platform promotes their series. Whether it's Netflix or a traditional book publisher, they will buy ads for your series and help you get eyes on your work. Because if they don't do that, then their financial investment in you and your series, it won't get any return. readership drop off over time and basically blame my series for that instead of the fact that it never got any promotion. I can think of many reasons why Webtoon didn't promote my series, many of which are contradicting. In the beginning, I was told that Webtoon was trying to expand its action genre, and because of this, I could look forward to a good amount of promotion. But it quickly became apparent that Webtoon was mostly still focused on their romance series, despite saying that they wanted to get away from being known for having a young teenage female audience. Covenant also admittedly has a lot of mature content, but not like NSFW stuff, just like swearing and violence, which is prevalent in a lot of other series. Covenant also has offensive, sacrilegious themes. I'm not stupid, I literally wrote it, I know what's in it. But if that is what was barring them from promoting it, then I don't know, like just don't publish my work. Like if you don't want to be associated with it, then why publish it, you know? Like if you invest in it, you should help it grow, right? And naturally, with very little promotion, my series readership was dropping off and my paycheck would follow. After floundering a bit with my readership since Covenant got no advertisements, I took it upon myself to use social media to grow my audience. I started creating my own promotional art and trying my best to make viral tweets and TikToks to reach the right people. Mostly, I made memes about my series from the perspective of a fan and not the perspective of a creator, and I was copying formats used by editors and artists in other fandoms to appeal to potential fans. If a meme format was doing really well in the, Jujutsu Kaisen fandom, I would copy it and apply it to my series. And I basically just kept researching and repeating this over and over with different fandoms and different fandom content. Because I'm in fandom too, you know, like I'm a fan and I'm a creator. So by being in fandom, I'm researching on how to appeal to fandom. I think a lot of creators struggle with marketing because they feel like they have to make content from the perspective of being an artist. But that usually only appeals to other artists and not to potential fans and readers. Many creators are also too close to their series, and it makes it really hard for them to explain their work quickly in a way that captures short attention spans. To them, their comic is a long, long story that they have been working on for years and years, and simplifying that into a tweet or TikTok can feel almost disrespectful or painful. This is why marketing teams are usually separate from the creators. But when I needed to grow my readership to make a living, I had no choice. I had to become the marketing team myself. As my TikToks kept constantly going viral, I racked up tens of millions of views, which translated into about 500,000 new subscribers to Covenant over a year of making TikToks, all driven to my webcomic by my own marketing. This traffic directly increased my income to the point where I had a comfortable living and I could afford to take breaks instead of working myself to the bone week to week. As my readership grew, I started getting tons and tons of requests for physical editions of my series. So I reached out to an agent, my amazing agent Britt, and thank God she said she was a fan of my series, and we were able to work together to look for a print publishing deal, which was an amazing opportunity to give my readers what they wanted and also to introduce Covenant to a whole new audience. She helped me get a print publishing deal with Oni Press, who have been amazing to me and to my series. They've been so eager to promote my books and send me to events, which has never happened to me before. And not only did they acquire the first season of Covenant for print, but they also bought the second season because of the success of the first 3 books. I also found that there are a lot of comic readers who just don't like digital comics and they prefer the physical copy, so they are book-only Covenant readers now, and that's been so cool to go out and like see them, meet them, and sign their books. A little side story, if you have made it this far, some of you might know that I had a little bit of trouble with my digital publisher in printing my books. So when my graphic novel was first being released, I tried to let my webtoon readers know that my book was coming out. And Covenant is definitely not the first webtoon to be adapted to print. I have plenty of friends published by webtoon who also got their series printed by another publisher, and they were able to advertise their own books to their webtoon readers just fine. And you'd think that promoting the book would be a win-win for, me and webtoon, because people discovering Covenant through the books can just go on webtoon to read ahead. Unfortunately, that's not how they saw it, and it was with my series that they decided to draw the line. And they prohibited me from telling my readers about my books. And they went into my episodes, removed my book promos, which has never happened to anyone else before, by the way, and it just escalated into this whole ordeal. In the end, after the that Webtoon faced for doing this to me. I was finally allowed to let my readers know that the book was being printed, but the experience left such a sour taste in my mouth that it became hard to keep working for Webtoon when it felt like they were actively trying to stop me from succeeding. In 2024, I decided to stop publishing Covenant on Webtoon and instead find a different platform to finish the story. And I have found a home for the rest of the series, and that's what I've been working on for the past year. I just thought that I'd be able to let you guys know more about where it's going sooner, but unfortunately that hasn't happened yet. So to everyone who has just been really patient and waiting for the continuation, I am so thankful for you, and hopefully in the coming year I'll be able to talk a little bit more about its new home. So just know that it's not the end. I am still working on Covenant and it will still be coming out eventually. So why did Covenant succeed? I wanted to make this video because I get asked a lot for tips, and a lot of creators come to me asking me for advice on how to, take this original idea and story and garner hundreds of thousands of fans around the world for it. I think my main takeaway from all of this and this entire journey is that you really have to go out there and do it yourself. Of course, I have had a lot of wonderful people who have helped me in my journey with Covenant, my amazing agents, editors, that I could not have done this without, my coloring assistants even. What I mean is that you really have to go out there and make these things happen for you and your series. There was a period of time when I was, down in the dumps because my series launch was not going the way I wanted it to, and I was just waiting for, something to happen, something to make it better, for my series to be discovered by its intended fandom, and for all of these fans to pass around a viral tweet or something like that, and then all of these fans would finally come and discover my series. And that never happened until I was making that viral tweet go around, making that viral TikTok go around, and dragging those fans to my series with my own two hands. Even now, I don't think you need a digital publisher to make this stuff happen. Because I've had the experience of going out there and pulling in my own fans and readers, I'm confident that I can do it with my next series. And I'd also personally advise, along the